Hi everyone, I'm Tom, and it's that time of the end of it, where we talk about a hastily assembled but repeatedly attempted list of the games that I like the most this year. As always, there's so many good things. It's really hard to cut it down. I didn't get to play nearly all of the games that I wanted to this year, and some haven't even made it over, so maybe they'll be covered next year. There's some big things probably. I haven't played Shackleton Base, I haven't got it. Captain's Chair's probably next year. Maybe there'll be some of the comments, but what are you looking forward to? What have you played and enjoyed? We'll get on to 2025 in a few weeks, I think. There's a lot I'm excited about already, but as for games that I have played enough times to think that they're amazing this year, let's try and keep it to 10 of them. Some caveats before we start. I mainly play solo or two players, and a lot of the two players is, not exclusively, but a lot of it is cooperative games. If they are competitive, then there is little to zero negative interaction between the players. No fighting, no stealing, anything like that. Have zero interest in doing that against another player. So that's just where I'm coming from. So starting out with number 10, but I'm going to say the numbers wrong in a minute because I'm reading off a spreadsheet and I've done row numbers wrong. So I'm going to say the wrong numbers for a few, and they'll just be one number higher. The right number will be in the corner. So number 10 is going to be Leviathan Wilds, a cooperative game of calming leviathans. There are these great big beasts that are angry and rampaging, but it's because there's something wrong with them. There's blight and things on there, and we are climbers that need to navigate these different leviathans with our own particular set of skills and try and destroy this blight and calm them down. So the climbers are made up of kind of two halves of decks. So you will get the choice of a character to be with their own particular thing and a class to be as well. And you shuffle that together, and that's the particular combo you've got for this game. And there's quite a lot just in the box anyway, like of each of the options. So the combinations between them, there's a lot of different things going on there. And they can range from just being someone that's particularly good at jumping to like a gambler who a lot of their cards flip a coin. And so if you really want to play it, more luck-based and a kind of push your luck element to a lot of your things. There's a lot of different kind of play styles catered for there as well as a lot of different leviathans. As they start, it's there's still a challenge in trying to scale these things, and your hand is your stamina. So if you run out of cards in your hand completely, then you will fall, and certain situation of the game will make you fall as well. You'll fall down to the next platform. So there's a lot of positional stuff in there as well. There's coordination between the characters of which direction we're going to go. Can I help you out here? Depending on the powers that you've got available. But the different leviathans have very different, they've got their own particular abilities and things, very different shapes to scale. Like there's starting ones that are just a great big grid to climb, and then there might be ones that are just like a load of long legs, and you've got to scale these completely different things that you can't really jump between, because in between our turns the leviathan is going to attack because it's been corrupted. It doesn't know what it's doing, so it's going to lash out at us, and we need to try our best to avoid these attacks. We see at the start of the turn what it's going to do. How can we mitigate that? How can we avoid it? And how can we help out the people that couldn't quite avoid it? There is so much packed into this game. It is so good. And yeah, the coordination and cooperation is really there as well. I love so many co-op games, but yeah, this really does encourage, everybody needs to talk and be on the same page, because not only are you going to have potentially very different abilities based on just what you've got in your hands right now, but of the particular combo of the character and class that you've ended up with, but the situations that you're going to be in. How are you going to achieve these things? Who's going to get there first? Is someone in trouble, running out of stamina and needs some help there? It's fantastic. Number 10 is Let's Go to Japan, which is a drafting game. We are trying to collect sets of symbols, and at the bottom of each of these cards they're going to score something in an abstract kind of way. But the theme of the game is that we are planning this itinerary of our holiday to Japan, and each of the columns corresponds to a day. At the start of the game we'll get a special thing that each day does best, that there'll be maybe a discount on that thing, or the weather will be really good to go sightseeing, that kind of thing. And the cards will often have symbols of the different traits on there you want to try and get the right symbols in the right days to qualify for better bonuses. But there is also some things will take place in Tokyo or Kyoto. Some will let you choose between them, but there's also travel between the places you've got to think of. Every time you change the color of cards, you've got to figure out a way to travel there, or it's going to cost you points. There's like a happiness meter that's going up or down that can affect your points as well. And said at the bottom of all of these cards is kind of your highlight of the day. When you put the cards in these columns, you can put them in any space you want, but the card that is on the bottom that is showing is going to have a special scoring condition that if you've satisfied it at that point in the trip, so it's no good if you go shopping loads of times later, if you've shopped enough times before this, if you have saved enough money, if you have had enough relaxing moments at this point in the trip, then you will qualify for these extra points or extra symbols. And I think there's something really special about the marriage of these mechanisms to the theme as well. I love kind of filling this grid up mainly and trying to get it right, even though, you know, the draft eventually you're not going to get past the things that you want, especially as you narrow down the things. You can get these tokens that will let you draw more cards, but trying to, you know, do all of this matching and stuff, and at the same time trying to fill this itinerary, and at the end you can have this really great scoring moment where you can kind of read out what you did. Okay, everyone's going to score Monday. Okay, what did you do on Monday? I went to this zoo, and then we went to go in all of these manga shops and stuff, and you kind of read out all of this stuff, and then like what your highlight of the day was if you qualified for it. It plays really quickly and smoothly. I'd say, like, from a gameplay perspective, I am not necessarily thinking about what I am passing to other people. Like, tend to be that in a drafting game. I am the most focused on, like, I'm trying to have a lovely trip. I'm not so much trying to stop you from having a lovely trip. So like the competitive elements sometimes is a little bit lost on me, but I massively enjoy playing it, and especially kind of the reveal at the end when we find out what we've done. I've found it's really addictive, and it's on Board Game Arena now, so even more so. Next up is Inventors of the South Tigris from Garfield Games, completing the South Tigris trilogy. And just while we're on the subject of Garfield Games, The Anarchy has only been on Kickstarter at the moment. So if that had been a game released this year, it would be right near the top, and I expect it to be next year. Loved Hadrian's Wall loads. The Anarchy is Hadrian's Wall plus more stuff. Watch my playthrough of it, it's great. I've done playthroughs for, I think, everything in this list too. So that's good, isn't it, being a playthrough channel? So Inventors of the South Tigris, it is continuing with dice placement, but doing it in a different way again. The big thing, and probably more interactive thing in Inventors, is the fact that we are coming up with all of these different inventions that we put at the bottom of the board, and different people will be coming up with the thing, prototyping the thing, and actually releasing the invention. So a lot of the different players can play different roles in how these things come out, and the inventions will determine points that you'll qualify for at the end of the game for just being involved in it, but they will also potentially give you endgame scoring conditions too. You have these dice placement spots on your board that will activate for particular colours or totals in there, and they start out pretty basic. They're just going to get you like a couple of coins, like an extra card, something like that. But as you go through the game, you can add to these rows with more tiles, and they will potentially change the dice that you need in there, like the particular colours and values and stuff, to actually end up activating the whole thing. But it can mean that for one or two dice to be placed in there that satisfy those criteria, you'll get a load of stuff. There's a really cool thing with the dice as well, that they kind of level up over time in your in your available section, and then as they go higher and higher, you can like get rewards for them. As they reach higher levels as well, they can be used for higher values, so it's not just up to the die value that you've rolled. If you can, upgrade them enough or wait for long enough, they can be worth 1 or 5 more than the actual number on them, so you can qualify for more stuff with them. But if you kind of leave them unavailable for longer as well, you'll qualify for better and better bonuses when the dice eventually come out. So you have to weigh up how much you need them right now versus those big rewards later. As with all of the South Tigris games, it's really thinky, really crunchy. It's probably, I don't know if Scholars might, I think Inventors, maybe it's the heaviest one, maybe the most complex one, and it's kind of it's close between Scholars and Inventors for my favourite of the three, I think, so far. Sorry, Wayfarers, you're not very far off, but I think the colour mixing in Scholars might still do it, but I really like combining these inventions and getting in at the right time in Inventors as well. It's got an absolutely fantastic solo mode, and it's going to end up with, there's going to be expansions for the whole lot of them, and like a solo campaign and stuff. Really exciting. Can't wait for all of that stuff, but just Inventors as it exists now, Absolutely fantastic. Next up is Saltfjord from Aporta Games. I absolutely loved Santa Maria, whatever year that came out. I think 2017, was it? It was one of my favourite games of that year, just for the kind of central dice drafting mechanism where you are choosing a die from the ones available on the board. You have a personal board made up of rows and columns, and like certain colours will activate the rows, certain colour will activate the columns. You put the die that you placed in that number of row or column and move it along, activating everything that it comes across, whether that's performing actions, gaining your resources, and then it stops on the end, blocking the last thing on there. There were great things about Santa Maria, but the theme and stuff and some of the iconography, yeah, it could do with a revisit. Hey, Saltfjord is a revisit, which implements a lot of stuff from Santa Maria, including a little bit from the expansion, I think, as well, in an optional rule, but takes us to a frozen climate. It puts us in the role of fishermen. One of the new central things is that we can go fishing in this, and it's a kind of, well, not so much, yeah, there's a bit of push your luck involved. You can either come back with all of the fish you've got so far, or you can go further out to sea and get more lucrative fish. There's tech tracks to go up that will make you better at either building new things on that player board so that more things will activate when you get on there, and there's also bonuses for filling in rows and columns on there. It's such a good system that I'm so glad to see it back in a new thing. So there's this whole polyomino business to trying to fill that personal board up, and how quick do you need these bonuses versus, you know, which actions do you need right now? Are the dice even going to be available for that? Have you got the mitigation for that? There are special player powers that you can earn either by going up these tech tracks, or you'll start the game with a particular one as well. There are deliveries to be made too, and if you build up these deliveries, you'll get more and more income at the end of rounds, as well as potentially big points at the end of the game. Again, it's re-implementing a core mechanism that I loved so much already, that yeah, I'm so excited to see it back, and it is just so satisfying. It's got a simple solo mode that you are just drafting off these, like the dice are put on these sheds at the bottom that are the end of round bonuses, rather than being the first to finish a round in a multiplayer game getting your choice of the bonuses. You have to draft the right dice to get those sheds clear so you can choose the right bonus from it. It's a simple solo mode, but it works really nicely. It's a beat your own score thing. It's another fantastic, quick but crunchy time. Number 6 is, I think, the most recent entry to this list. So does it count? Absolutely counts. I've played it more times than some of the ones on this list. It is probably the first print and play entry into this, not that there haven't been some fantastic ones, and I've got it right here. It's 52 Realms Adventures, and I'll disclaimer you right here, 52 Realms and Inventors, actually. I did videos for when they were originally on Kickstarter. Discount everything I'm about to say if you like. But 52 Realms is a solo dungeon crawling game that you need a deck of cards for. So it's Postmark Games, who have done fantastic print and play things in the past, from like Waypoint, Aquamarine, they did Scribbly Gum earlier this year, Koala Baby Rescue. There's so many already now. So they do these Kickstarters where you back the game for like £5 and you get these print and play files where the game will get expanded. So like the fundamental game, and there'll be a video playing in the corner, but I can just show it you here. So you'll have a marker moving through this dungeon. There'll be different events that you need to satisfy by discarding these cards. Based on where cards are on your board, you'll play as a different character with their own set of abilities. You might have cards that give you items that will let you regenerate your strength and stuff. Cards up here are wounds. If you take too many wounds, you'll die. There's cards that are equipment, and you'll need to like tap that equipment to maybe go through a corridor to like find the right lock or something like that. You'll need to tap cards of a certain value to get through, or you'll have to have battles where you draw more cards from the deck, and the suit of the cards will define the particular enemy that you're fighting, the HP it has, and then each round of combat you will draw a card, and the suit of that combat will tell you what attack the enemy is doing, or big defense that they're doing, and you can choose to try and block their attacks, to try and do attacks with your equipment. It's so fast playing, it is so addictive. There's a lovely little element with where when you're fighting the enemy, here's the enemy's HP track. If you can deal enough damage to leave their health on one of these exact numbers, you get to refresh some equipment, or you might parry their attack so they don't actually get to act on some of the things they might do, or you might take wounds. So there's a really nice decision to be made there based on like, should I attack or defend in there? How much health that going to leave them with? Is this really worth it? How much loot am I going to end up getting from this? Because when you finish the battle, you can just take the reward as points, or you could take it as a new item or equipment to try and help you later on, because you need to get to the end of this dungeon in the corner, fight the boss, and if you manage to defeat the boss without the deck running out or you dying, then you count up all of your loot, and that's the points that you get. So far, I know that the game has like come out now, and there's a character and a map I haven't tried yet, because there's a combination as well. Like Postmark have done great things with like doing a load of extra maps for their stuff, but each game you'll combine like a character and a map. So like I'm the barbarian playing the Tomb of the Wandering Soul, but you can mix and match these up. So the barbarian is all about doing combat really quickly, and if you can do combat within 2 rounds, you'll get the enemy's card as loot as well. The seer gets to kind of modify the cards up or down by 1, so you can get a perfect block which you can get better rewards for, or like it might enable you to just tap to go through a corridor rather than going for as many fights, because if you go through a corridor with the exact number it requires, rather than you can do it with a bigger one, if you do it with the exact number with the seer, then you get an extra loot there instead. It's very quick playing, it's very addictive. All you need is a standard deck of cards, anything to use as some markers, and to print the things out, or you could do them on like an iPad or something if you would like you don't actually need to mark the sheets up as well like the printer plays in the past. Once you have got one printed out, you never need to write on it, so like it's just out there ready to play in the future too. It is so good. 52 Realms Adventures. Right, we're halfway. It's honourable mentions time. There's timestamps I think you can skip ahead if you just want to know the other ones, or there's a text list if you want to be even quicker about it. But yeah, there's such good things that just didn't quite make it. I want to talk about first, above all, Little Alchemists from CG. Now, Alchemist is a game from, I think, about 2015, is it from? A great big heavy logic game. We are combining ingredients to try and work out the components of these magical potions. It tells you what potion it makes, and from a bit of deduction and logic and stuff, you are trying to work out the base components of these ingredients and publish theories about them. It's a fantastic game. As I said, it's a pretty heavy one. So the original designer has gone back to that alchemist system and stripped it right down to its essentials to make it a game that children can play. So it's like a beginner logic game for like 6-7-year-olds. And it starts out with that core thing of you are throwing ingredients into this app. Now, this is one I haven't done a playthrough for yet, but I'm hoping to do a special playthrough of it. You are putting ingredients in with the app, takes a picture of it and tells you what potion it makes. And the very, very core game, that's all you're kind of doing. You put it in your the grid's a lot smaller. You say what potion that makes, and eventually customers will come out, and if you can make the potion for them, they'll give you some money for it. Most money at the end of the game wins. And that's the whole system at the start. And at the end of that chapter 1, everyone will get a quiz on, like, collectively, we answer these questions about, well, what do these make when they're combined? What do you think this is? And if we get those questions right between all of the players, then we can advance to the next chapter, because the rulebook is full of like little stickered pages. You go through these chapters, there are a load of boxes with secret components in, and eventually, without spoiling anything that is in those boxes, then we've seen the first 4 boxes at the moment. Each box introduces some extra elements and a slightly more complicated thing, where there's one extra thing to think about. There's more ways to score points. There are more things to deduce or think about in it. I've played this about 6 or 7 times, I think, with like mostly adults, but also a 6-year-old who is really enjoying it as well and is fantastic at it. And that's kind of the satisfying part of it. As a big, deduction logic puzzle fan, taking that idea and being able to introduce it to children. And I think the designer said, if after you have finished unlocking all of the boxes, you will end up with not alchemists. That's still really complicated, heavy game, but you will end up with a game that the whole family can play together. And as you play through the game as well, you will perhaps maybe at some point we'll come to a bit where it ends up too advanced, but you can just wait and keep playing the game as it is until you add more and more bits onto it. You can strip it back to previous chapters too. It is so well done. feels like it should be an entry in the list now. I've talked about this for longer than other things too. Wormspan is a fantastic re-implementation of Wingspan that I loved already, but it adds, like, it changes the way that we get food. There's no dice tower and all of that anymore. We have to make the environments that the dragons are going to live in, and that adds an extra card type. So we have these little square cards that are going to define the habitat and give us extra bonuses based on that as well. A little bit more complex, more crunchy than Wingspan, and it's dragons. And yeah, I think, like, I was a bit like wary when it was announced, but it's overtaken Wingspan for me right now. The only thing Wingspan has got kind of still on it is just the sheer variety and amount of expansions and stuff, and those different modes that you can play with, and the nectar and stuff. Wormspan's only just starting out, but yeah, it's a fantastic showing. Tales of the Arthurian Knights takes Tales of the Arabian Nights, adds solo and co-op, which is a enormous plus anyway, and takes us to Arthurian tales. Really like the tales that are told in it, like the setting more as well. The fact that we can play it cooperatively, although like we're just earning points to try and empty a bank of it, the story is the most important thing. It simplifies how we're choosing things with those, instead of choosing the matrices, you generally read a story passage out, get a choice of two things, that sends you to a different passage, and then in that new passage you'll have a choice of a couple of skills that you can use. All the skills are relevant. Even if you don't have one, you still roll a die and you might succeed based on that thing, but having the skills will make you more likely to succeed at those rolls. Statuses don't stick around forever now. Like, if you get a bad thing, it's going to be gone in a few rounds time. Just in like the few games that we've had with it so far, there's been some like pretty wild stories. I think like someone got turned into a pig and then had to enter a jousting competition in the next round. Some really cool things have happened in it. Yeah, it's really good. Imperium Horizons, loved Imperium anyway. Horizons kind of refines that, like teaches it in a better way in the rulebook as well. It's just a great big box full of new stuff and wilder ideas. We can be Martians and cultists now. They're both in Horizons, right? I might be getting my wires crossed there. I think they are though. Still, like, all of the superlatives about how good a deck building system it is, how good the solo system is in it as well. Now there's little reference cards that you can just have on the table for the solo instead of needing to sift through the book. The only thing still with Imperium is that like it's a little bit too long for me. Like it's so satisfying and it's so crunchy, but yeah, it doesn't come out to the table as much because of the length. SETI was so good as well with its moving solar system, all these multi-use cards where like it actually matters and the look of the draw doesn't matter as much in there because you're not necessarily hunting them for this particular thing. They will help you with these actions, or they'll help you with your income. It's a very, very, very tight economy in it, and so yeah, with two player and solo, like the scanning doesn't matter as much. It's not that you can't ever do it, but it's an area majority thing that would work a lot better, I imagine, with more players. But hey, two player and solo generally with things like this, so that's a bit of a downside. And yeah, it can go a little bit long with it's like 5 big rounds of it, but you do a lot of satisfying things in there, and it's pretty fantastic. And from the same designer, Galileo Galilei, I think I like that more. It's a rondel game where we're looking to the skies and stuff, and we are trying to observe these different planets. I've got a playthrough for that. You can see that. I've done with SETI as well. Oh, and Agamonia. I know I'm just reading off every game I played this year now. Agamonia, a great big box of wonder. This adventure game that we did the first few, like they're kind of tutorial scenarios, but really like the idea of like books as the maps. Like great in Jaws of the Lion. Agamonia uses it perfectly here as well. And the idea that there are all of these points of interest on the map, and when we get into a certain range, we will reveal what that thing is, and then maybe you have to go over it to interact or talk with that person or something. But it's really nice for kind of steering you in these different ways, and you can kind of see on the map as well like what it might represent. So, like off camera, more recently we have got into playing like the proper scenarios after the tutorial has finished. I say that one concern that we have had that has made it drop a bit, even with these like recent plays, is that it seems brutally hard at 2 players, which is like, I know some people have been playing multiple characters. We're wondering whether to try that. We usually don't really like doing it. It's easier going. You'd be able to do it in Agamonia better than you'd be able to do it in Gloomhaven. But we're wondering whether to do that or just like, it's been a bit frustrating, like getting onto the further things, which is why it isn't higher up. But yeah, it's a fantastic box of wonders still. And like, if you've got a higher player count, you don't need to worry about that. Okay, back to the list then. Number 5 is Primal, the Awakening. make a great big boss battling game where the kind of the great big map and the movement of these bosses is eliminated. Your arena is playing in this circle with quadrants. You will position in these quadrants, the boss is in the middle, and the positioning of you all will make a difference to your attacks on it, its attacks on you. It'll be vulnerable from different sections. It's got like escalation as you go through the fight. The boss will behave differently, might be vulnerable from different positions. The bosses all have their own AI decks, but another key difference in this is that it's not a standard co-op where, you know, we're going to take turns and then the boss takes turns. The boss is generally, not always, but generally triggered by things you have done. So our cards all have colours based on whether it's, you know, an attacking card or a defensive card. So if you play a card of that colour, an AI card might be triggered by that. If you do a card that gives you aggro, like that might turn the boss around towards you, and the different bosses will have different triggers on the back of their cards. You can see 3 cards in the display, and if you do one of the things that will trigger that, or maybe multiple in one go, you've got to weigh up how important is it for me to do this thing right now, or should I wait until someone can maybe, you know, till those cards will sometimes refresh at the end of every round, sometimes get blocked by other players' abilities, because we've also got our own things as well. Whether we are, you know, the big sword and shield bloke, the person who's going to stand at the back with this great big machine gun. Yeah, there's a lot of differences in there as well, and we all have different kind of decks to start off with and our basic things. But as we go through fighting these bosses, there is a story that goes through this campaign that is quite variable, because there are, like, I think 11 chapters in the big main campaign, but you will choose where to go off, which land to go off to, and which boss to fight, and you will end up with things from that boss that you will be able to craft into new equipment, new weapons and things. And there is such great combo gameplay from the characters and their cards as well, that often the cards that you play will want you to play a certain colour before it or after it, or build up, like everyone's got their own kind of particular thing that they want to do to give their best combos. But you can have such big satisfying turns in this, sometimes at the risk of it's going to just trigger the boss to do a load of stuff that might destroy us all, but sometimes it's worth that risk. It is so good. Like the minis are beautiful as well, like the great big scary things for the different bosses. The artwork great in it too, but yes, when it boils down to it, this kind of distilled experience of moving around this tiny fighting arena, fighting this boss, and having incredibly satisfying combo-y card gameplay that we can like morph and change throughout the campaign too. So good. Next up, at number 4, only number 4, thought this was going to be number 1. Sorry, it's Civolution. It is a great big civilization game from Stefan Feld. In this, we are futuristic students taking this exam of building the perfect civilization. So we are being marked on how well we do this. We have this great big grid in front of us that's all the actions in the game. There's loads. There's what, like 30 actions or something? But you will do these actions by combining dice. You need to make pairs of dice up to activate those particular actions, and they're kind of, you know, ordered into the rows and columns, so you can see I've got these dice available, what's it going to activate. All of those actions can be upgraded up to 2 times each as well. And it sounds like a lot, and even if you look through the rulebook, it will seem like a lot as well, because it's got to describe all of these different actions to you. But generally, on a turn, like, there's a lot potentially you could do, but the game is not as heavy or complex as I think that makes it seem. It's like probably there's more going on, there's more to be thinking about, but what you can tend to do turn to turn, like there's still mitigation that you can do with this. There are ideas that you can have that will adjust your dice up or down by 1. There's these focus tokens that you can get that will act as any die, and so there's ways around getting what you want. Sometimes it is down to the dice, and like I say in Castles of Burgundy, like there's a chance you will always have those couple of turns in the game where all you can do is just, I'm just gonna have to get workers and do one thing I didn't really want to do. The way that we're doing things with the pairs of dice and the so many actions in this makes it feel massively different to Castles of Burgundy. But yeah, sometimes there will be that turn where like, oh, I've had a reset, I've rolled all of my dice, and this is rubbish for me, and I've got nothing that changes it, so I'm gonna have to have a turn. Like, you can sleep and get more of these tokens and adjust it back, but we are like moving on a map, we are, you know, reproducing, getting more people out there, spreading out to different areas. There are a load of variable scoring opportunities. There are tracks to go up that will get us rewards as we do it and be worth points, but certain tracks will be worth more either at the end of each of the rounds. So the thing that scores at the end of round one will be worth tons of points, and then less and less as the game goes on, and then 3 special categories will be worth more in final scoring. So there's all this to think about. There will be events in each round, so you want to try and focus that, like, oh, being up the brown track, the Inventions track, is going to be really good if I can do that in round one. So maybe I want to focus on that. There are decks of cards for each of the colours too that we start with either a fixed hand of, or as you go on you can start to, I think you can do some drafting, but like the main normal way of doing it is you draw 2 of each colour and then choose one of them, and 3 of these like starting chip cards. And there can be massive variety in these cards where you are building up this tableau that fills in the top of your board, and if you can fill in rows of it, you'll unlock bonuses, income chips and things, and they're all worth points at the end of the game too. There is so much going on, but as I say, it's like, once you actually get into playing it, it is a lot smoother and not as, you know, terrifyingly complex as it might seem from perhaps the rulebook or just looking at a picture of that player board. It is deceptively smooth once you get into it. That doesn't take as much as it might seem, I don't think. The bot on the whole for the solo mode as well has been quite satisfying. Like, there's a little thing I don't really like of how it gets like free, like if it can't move, then it gets to reproduce for free, and if the spaces it's all in are free, then it gets like free movement. Combined with certain scoring things, it seems ridiculously overpowered, but at the same time, you're just getting to play Civolution. It doesn't really matter the win or losing part. There's a little thing there, but generally the solo system is quite simple. You'll often be rolling a die to see what it does on this card that you've drawn, and it'll be moving up tracks or moving around the board and stuff. But still, after like 7 or 8, maybe more games of it, there's like, of course there's more to discover at that point, but yeah, I haven't seen nearly all of the different cards, all of the different paths to go down. Like, that's somewhat dictated at the start by like, oh, I've got cards that would upgrade this action or reward me for doing this, or I've started out with this upgraded action for exploring, so maybe I want to do the exploration action and uncover some of these bonuses. And oh look, well, we've got this, we found the mystical oak tree that's going to give me more points for settling around that, so okay, I'll go off in that direction. Or I've got this goal that wants me to have this resource, but we don't know where it is yet, so maybe I'll go off to that type of terrain and go and find that thing. There is so much scope and space in this game. It is so well done. Yeah, congratulations, Stefan Feld. As if he hadn't designed like a billion other great games. But I say this is like a pretty, like, you might say, oh, there's this, maybe the dice bit reminds you of Castles of Burgundy a bit. It doesn't really for me. And his other games have got their own differences anyway, but I think perhaps Civolution, more than a lot of the others, would be a very different thing. Like, if you are not a fan of some of Stefan's games, maybe give this one a go, because it's very different. But I was already a fan of them and I loved this. Number 3, and in kind of a repeat of last year's, I'm putting something really high because you've played a lot of the older versions of it, but a new one came out this year. A little bit, but I like this version as well. It is Marvel United Multiverse. I bought in some kind of really cheap Amazon.com bundle a couple of years ago, and it's got to be cheap to get it over here sometimes. It was like the base game and Spider-Man and Doctor Strange or something like that. I thought it seemed kind of cool. Maybe it's going to be too light for us. And it basically sat on a shelf for about 2.5 years, something like that. And we finally got it out like right at the start of this year. There's been a few kind of defining games. Hey, Legendary didn't come out with like a new standalone thing. If we're talking expansions, say 2099 as an excuse to talk about Legendary so much, because that's an old favourite that we have reacquainted ourselves with and love it again. But Marvel United has been completely new to us this year, and we have played it tons. It is, at least kind of with the starting sets, it is an accessible, like, lighter weight co-op game where you will play as a Marvel hero with your own deck of cards that generally, especially in like the base game heroes, they have symbols at the bottom that will help you fight or move around or do heroic things, like solve these problems that are on each of the 6 locations, rescue bystanders, fight these henchmen. And there is a villain that we are playing against that has their own deck of cards that will define what they do. They will be moving around the board, adding more of these tokens on, trying to fulfill whatever nefarious plan they have. We are trying to either solve the things on the locations, rescue enough bystanders, defeat enough henchmen to fill 2 of 3 of these mission cards. As soon as you've defeated 2 of those missions, the boss gets harder, but you can start attacking them, defeat the villain, win the game. From that kind of simple and effective system, because of the scope of the things that you can include in Marvel, and kind of because of the experience of going back to this, Multiverse is the 3rd time around of like the cycles of it. And each time they've gone back, like we've played Marvel United and like the expansion and stuff, and like, this is really cool, I'm really enjoying this, I would like to play more of this. They did an X-Men one, and I do love the X-Men, and did go through like a little obsession with a good chunk of this year reading hundreds of X-Men comics, but like in terms of Marvel United, started to introduce more interesting ideas, more complex things that like it's not approaching like a heavy game still, but yeah, more complex things in the unique cards that heroes have. Like certain cards they'll always start out with, cards that want to stay out in this timeline and will give you a special power while it's out there. And so too, the villains start to have more complex and more wild things that all like are very thematic to what they're about too. There's a character in the Spider-Geddon box, Spot, that is like jumping through all of these portals all through the game, and you need to kind of chase him around the board as he kind of jumps around. Juggernaut just bulldozes through loads of locations at once, doing loads of damage to everyone. And it's true for like the heroes as well. Like Nightcrawler's got loads of cards that just let him, instead of just moving about, can just teleport anywhere and can teleport other people with him. Jean Grey's got telepathy and lets her like let other people get cards back out of the timeline and adjust her hand. It's Superior Spider-Man that's got like the spider bots to leave around there that can help them remove the henchmen from the different locations. And so Multiverse is like there's a whole like massive Kickstarter exclusive part to it, which is unfortunate as well, that like if you're coming to it late, there's always kind of, you can join the next Kickstarter and pay all of this money for it, but like if you want a particular character or particular expansion, there's so much of it that's kind of gated off unless you can get like a second-hand one at this point, which is unfortunate as well. And even all the ones that you can get in shops, there's like a Kickstarter version of it that's got an extra character in that you might really want. Who doesn't want Spider-Ham? But some really cool things this time is like introducing equipment cards that came in the Spider-Geddon expansion, and giving you equipment cards for previous characters as well. So people from that base set that you kind of think, oh, some of these heroes, going back to them, it's fun playing them still, but they're a little bit simplistic compared to like the more recent ones. The equipment card gives them like extra things that they can do. You can activate these equipment cards on your turn for extra benefits and do things in the future to recharge them back up as well. There's team cards, so you can coordinate between the players and play characters from these teams and get extra thematic cards in your deck. There's campaigns now, but the campaigns seem to rely a little bit on playing the different modes of the game. Like if you get all these expansions, if you're like, oh, we don't really want co-ops, we want to be able to fight against each other, you can play like, there's X-Men expansions that add racing against, you play teams racing against each other. There's a new Civil War expansion that has the heroes actually pitted against each other. There's like a traitor mode in some of the things. There's all sorts of stuff to cater for. Not interested in any of that. I only want to play it cooperatively. There's like pets now. There's like still, again, because of the scope of Marvel stuff, there's a load of characters from each expansion where we're like, who? But equally bringing in like Mighty Thor and Immortus and the Hulkbuster, the Iron Man, and all of the extra Carnage villains. Like, as a Spidey fan, I love that there's like a special Sinister Six mode, and there's like there's so many Spider villains now that can combine together into this great big thing. There's an enormous Galactus in there now. I'm just listing models and the allure of them, but hey, I've not a lot of games have gotten me painting a ton of them, and I've painted about 150 Marvel United characters this year. Probably would have done some more gaming if I hadn't been doing that. But if you're wondering about painting, Marvel United, I'd say, is a great one to get started on, because I like these bigger, chunkier minis. it's a lot easier. And a user on Board Game Geek, like Dom, right, has come up with like a map that, to be honest, is something that Simon, you should employ him to make this thing official for the game, because like that's another thing that, like, if you're just playing with all of these separate bits, like there's a load you're never going to see in it, and it's nice to have a through line through it. Someone's made like a legacy campaign as well with like event cards and stuff too, but the campaign map is the one that I prefer. There's a new one just come out to add all this multiverse stuff in. Rachel and I started playing one when it was just the X-Men and the normal one, so I think we'll probably start again to incorporate all this, but it kind of encourages you to play all of your stuff and like unlock the things bit by bit through them. It's a really cool system to try out as well. But yeah, downside, there's so much of it, and so much of it is gated exclusively now, but I think just picking up like a base box and some retail expansions in it, there's loads of variability, there's loads of satisfying gameplay in that. I think it is so good. Marvel United Multiverse, because that came out this year, but I am talking about my discovery of, I've got Multiverse and Multiverse stuff, but I've discovered the whole Marvel United multiverse itself this year as well, and it has been a fantastic discovery. Next up, on the same kind of track, and actually from the same publisher, it is Cthulhu Death May Die, Fear of the Unknown. I came a little bit late to Cthulhu Death May Die as well. I only got it last Halloween, I think, on my Patreon vote. Hey, patreon.com/slickerdrips, who'd like to help me make things. But I had kind of like seen it and been kind of interested in it, part of like my explosion in interest in the last like 3 or so years in like Eldritch horror and getting back into old Arkham horror and stuff. Been like, oh, there's this Cthulhu Death May Die that people really like. But I'd seen that it was a big Kickstarter and there's loads of stuff you can't get from it in like an exclusive box and stuff. I don't know. I'll put an eBay saved search on it and see if it ever comes up for cheap. It never did. But got convinced by the people voting for it that no, there's actually a load of stuff just in the box you can buy from the shops, and that Kickstarter box, you don't even really need it anyway. I'll say they were right about that. So the way it works, and this is true of Fear of the Unknown. Fear of the Unknown is a new standalone box, so you can start with that if you like, but it's a very modular game that you play with. The box has got 2 ancient ones in it, and it has got 6 chapters in it. They call them seasons and episodes and stuff, but yeah, they don't follow along necessarily. I think there's one that's on Kickstarter, or has been on Kickstarter, that's going to introduce campaigns and things to have some overarching stuff. But yeah, generally you are an ancient one is being summoned by cultists. You need to stop them. And once you stop them, there will be some kind of eldritch god wandering around, and you need to kill it with guns and knives and stuff, which usually that's not the point of these Eldritch games. They are like, if the thing is summoned, we are probably done for. Let's stop that happening at all costs, and being a kind of doom and gloomier game, doomier and gloomier, which, not to put them down, hey, I love Eldritch Horror and Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, probably the doomiest and gloomiest of them all. But this is a much more action-oriented thing that you are running around, rolling dice. Like, when you move around the board, enemies come with you. So, like, you are grouping up these big gangs of enemies, trying to take them down with a load of dice rolls and things, and taking more risks. Like, I'd say it's unique in, like, it's not really like dungeon crawling or anything like that, but it's unique in these dice-chucking combat games that there is a timer constantly ticking down, sometimes incredibly quickly, and usually when you would be thinking about stopping and resting a little bit and let's just take a little bit of time to regroup, the clock is ticking down, or these enemies or the objective of your particular scenario that can be wildly different as well. Like some of the ones in the Fear of the Unknown, there's a witch trial, so you need to go around chasing all of these jurors. There's a load of cultists that are being summoned to this spire that you can't get to because it's behind a load of locks, so you need to like find a load of keys to get it all undone, all the way to, I think this isn't something I haven't got, there's like a scenario involving like an ice cream man or something. But yeah, there's loads of wildly different things, and so you are constantly encouraged to push yourselves, because as well, one of the things that you can lose, you've got health, you've got stress, which can be used to reroll dice, but you've also got sanity, very important thing in Cthulhu based games. And often as you roll these dice, you will start to lose your sanity, and everyone draws a madness at the start of the game. They'll mean like, oh, if you're like alone, you jump to a space with an enemy, or you deal a damage to everything in your space, friendly or not. There's a cool one that's, I think it's an exclusive thing that I haven't got, that you as a player can't communicate until your next madness thing. But regardless of all of that, you get a bad thing usually to happen, but you also get to level up your skills. Everyone's got a completely unique skill to them, and a couple of standard skills that might like let you fight ranged, or let you add dice to your attacks, or let you treat symbols that usually mean nothing as successes. There is such an emphasis on you need to kind of push yourself too far, like you want to start going a bit mad to unlock your potential in all of these skills, but eventually, of course, going too far down that track is going to kill you, and if anyone dies before the thing's summoned, then the game is over. But there is so much, like, just talking in one box, like, there's those 2 ancient ones, and there is 6 different chapters. Not only are those chapters going to play differently, every chapter's got its own discovery deck of things you might find in there, whether it's companions or items that will help you in very different ways. The chapter provides half of the Mythos deck that's thematic to the thing that you're doing, and the ancient one you're fighting against has half of the Mythos deck as well that is thematic to what they're doing. So shuffled up, it all comes together really nicely, and it's very modular. Like, if you get it and love it, you can just buy another ancient one and have more variability just in those chapters. You can buy like one of the other standalone boxes or an expansion and add a load of chapters, and usually I think they come with one ancient one and stuff, like, but just in one of these boxes, just in the Fear of the Unknown box, there is so much going on. I think there's 10 investigators and things. There's so much variability, and I think you could just keep going with the one thing for ages. Or if you want to go all the way, it's got like, if you've got space in your house, there's like an enormous Cthulhu and now an enormous Godzilla you can get that, like, I don't know how big they are because I haven't got them, but ridiculously big. You can take it to extremes if you want, but I'd say just like from the base thing, like Fear of the Unknown has been like, oh, it introduces a new thing as well that is unknown monsters, where usually everything, the monsters are defined by the ancient one and the episode as usual. Every time you play it, those monsters are going to be in there, but other stuff will make it quite variable, even if you're just repeating the same combos. Now you can introduce unknown monsters into it that will add more monsters, and again, the more stuff that you get, you can combine that stuff in. But the unknown monsters will make it more difficult, because now there's extra things roaming around, extra cards being pulled. But the game now comes with relics that are these hugely powerful things, like start up with extra level ups, roll these extra dice, or give you more rerolls and things, that will also like balance out the difficulty as well. Unknown monsters make it harder, relics make it easier, so you use them both to try and balance it out. But the relics also, once you get to 3 madnesses and have had a few level ups and things, you unlock you suddenly start seeing the relic for what it really is, or what you, in your current state of mind, start to perceive it as, and it gets an even more powerful ability. There's really cool extra stuff as well, and I think that there's like pets, and they function as relics in some way as well. I'm up for pets in any game. I can be a land shark in Multiverse now, or at least have one around with me. But yeah, it's so good at what it does. It's not like there is like narrative happening in there, and often the game is won by someone making a big sacrifice or won against all odds. It's made some incredibly satisfying stories, but it's not like, you know, a Mansions or an Eldritch Horror where it has like a set story or is trying to have this big kind of narrative thing made up of chapters. It's not that. It's a lot more run and gun than that, but it is so... that's like a positive. It is so satisfying, and in doing it so differently too. It is such a good game, and I've done a few playthroughs for this. I don't know when they'll be out yet. I definitely did one of the original game last year. I'm going to be doing some of Fear of the Unknown, maybe all of it, because it is so good. And finally, we've reached the end. What can beat that though? Well, my favourite game, and again, unfair to other games, my favourite game of 2024 is Slay the Spire, the board game. Adapted from a video game that I have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours playing across many years and many devices. It is, started out, you know, a digital deck building game. You're going through a spire, trying to defeat enemies with a very basic deck at the start, still with special twists based on the character that you're playing, but at the end of every fight, you will add cards to that deck, or have the potential to. Will get potions, will get relics that will give you special permanent abilities. Like every 4 cards that you play, you get to draw a card or something like that. There's not one of those relics, but like extra things that will add twists to how you do it. So this kind of wildly successful, incredibly addictive, and like it's a digital one, but it is one of the best deck building games that exists. It is so good. I encourage you to give it a go if you haven't yet. It's on phones now, which is dangerous. But the board game translates that over, and there's a very real fear that definitely I had when I saw that it was on Kickstarter and stuff, that like I've just got to take that all from the video game and just play the board game version of it. Everything had, like, from the relics, from the damage values, everything has been changed in the game to make it less of a hassle, like less upkeep. Not that the video game has a load, because it's a video game. It does it all for you. Like when enemies are poisoned, it does the damage, it ticks it down. When people have all of these status ailments, it counts how many turns they're going to last for. Like, obviously, it's a pain and stuff's going to be forgotten if we have to handle that in the board game. So much of it is abstracted out that you don't, like, the damage numbers are smaller to make things easier to calculate, and the HP of everyone is a lot smaller, which also makes it very dangerous for the heroes, that they could be defeated by a load of big attacks. Statuses, like, get removed on the next attack, like it will make your next attack weaker or stronger, and then it will go away. And the way relics work have to be toned down for that reason, but are still fantastic in their combinations, as well as like everyone's got their own unique things. Every card has to be sleeved, because the other side of every card is an upgraded card, so there's still like all of the upgrading from the video game too that is boosting the power of your cards. It's got all of the 4 characters from the video game too, and special unlocks, like just like the video game, that you start out with still upgrades and things, but more basic decks, and you will unlock more and more complex cards as you get used to the game, as well as like the colorless cards and things and other secrets that I won't spoil for you. But the biggest draw, especially for me, for the board game, because yeah, like it's doing things in a different way, and I've really enjoyed playing it solo. But the major selling points to me is that you can play this cooperatively now. So the video game is an entirely solo experience. The board game can be played with 4 players, and we all have our own separate lanes of enemies that are spawned each level through the Spire that we are fighting against. So when they attack, generally, they are attacking you. Like the people in your line are attacking you, or sometimes everybody. Just like the video game, we can see the enemy's intent at the start of the round and plan on what we're going to do about that. And again, that's done so simply as well. We roll a die at the start of the round. Any relics that are worried about a die, use that die roll. Any enemies that will behave based on a die roll, use that single die roll. It's so good. But there is now cooperation in that so you know the people in your row are going to be attacking you, but you can attack anybody. So based on like how much damage you're taking, how much you can be shielding, you have to work out, who's in the most trouble right now and who do I go and help. And early on with the basic decks and easier enemies, like there's not as much to think about. Like it will be pretty obvious. Like you've mainly got hands of strikes that will do some damage and blocks that will do some defending. As you start to customize your character in your particular run by upgrading, by filtering these cards, by getting the rarer things in there, it starts to get deeper and more exciting. But also, like, the cooperation is always there. You start to upgrade or get these cards that can apply defense to anybody instead of just you. So you have to look at, especially like I've played a load of it solo, I've played a load of it 2-player, and we did like a full run at Beacon of 4-player games as well, which did take like a day, but like it is really cool playing it with a full player count as well, and having like all of that coordination between everyone and seeing everyone get really overpowered throughout the game. But you unlock ascensions and things that'll make it harder. Again, it's another thing that I'm so predisposed to like anyway, because I love and go through, like, I'm not in one right now, but go through very deep obsessions with playing Slay the Spire, so it's something that I'm very invested in anyway. But at the same time, that was putting me off to begin with, that like, oh, how are you going to adapt this is going to be terrible. It's just going to be like the exact same thing with a load of shuffling. And yeah, there's upkeep involved. Like, you've got to shuffle a load of stuff at the very start, like between runs and stuff. You've got to shuffle your own deck all the time in the actual fights. The video game did that for you. I think especially compared to many other board games that I have, like the upkeep or setup is not that much really, and the result is well worth it in my opinion. Just for having things like the shopkeeper's mat as a neoprene playmat with the little not for sale tag on it, like loads of little touches like that are beautiful too. It's got an absolutely beautiful production to it. Again, everything has been tweaked and adjusted so that it works well and quickly in the board game, but also takes as much of that upkeep and thought about the upkeep out of the game, and so you are just concentrating on what you're doing on your turn and what is about to be done against you. Just for bringing Slay the Spire kind of accurately, like adapting it so well to the tabletop, I would be so impressed just with that. But the fact that we can also play it cooperatively and that like Rach can join me on these runs just makes it excel, just makes it sing. I can't fault it in any way whatsoever. It is my favourite game of the year and probably of many years, and I hope that they make a million more of them. Not that you really can, but hey, Slay the Spire 2 is coming out, the video game, at some point. I'll have to check that. Is it out and I've missed it? probably a good thing productivity-wise. But hey, it's a little break coming up as well, isn't there, for the festive period? If not, it's time to just get addicted to normal Slay the Spire again. But yeah, I've had an excellent time every single session of it, and as I've unlocked more things and we start to go into the further ascensions and stuff and start to ramp up the difficulty, I can only see it just getting better and better and better. And probably like the video game, it'll be one of those things that like it'll stop for a while and we'll play other things, but inevitably we just keep coming back to it and trying to get better and better and eventually beat the top one. Have I done like all of the? I think I've only ever done Ascension 20 on the silence in the video game. I'm not as good at the other characters. I'm absolutely rubbish at the newest. It's the newest one, the Watcher. Yeah, the Watcher. Rach loves the Watcher, right? That's her favourite one. But I played loads of Slay the Spire before the Watcher was out, and then just spent all my time playing the Silent until I was good at it, so now I'm rubbish at all the other ones. Probably rubbish at all of them now. But hey, board game. It was great. You can see two full... They're not full runs because spoilers died before the end of one of them. But you can see a full 3-act run of Rach and I playing it. On the channel as well, and there's a few acts of me doing it too. Maybe we'll come back and do that more as well with like more difficult ascensions and just to play some more Slay the Spire because it's so good. But there we go, that is my favourite thing anyway. Those are my 10 and a load of honourable mentions of other things that I absolutely loved this year. I think like game wise, like convention wise too. Like I hadn't been to Essen for years before this year. That was fantastic going back to. It's the best expo in many, many years. We went to Beacon for the first time and that was a fantastic experience. GridCon as well. The best GridCon, I think. Many, many highlights like A Death May Die and A Great Fortune and Glory game. The Tales of the Arthurian Knights we played there where someone got turned into a pig and had to do some jousting. A great big 5-hour plus game of Eldritch Horror at 6 players with Ricky Royal name dropping. It was so good. There's so many games from this year that I haven't mentioned here that I've loved. There's so many that I've covered like already that I should have said this up front, but it's got to have come out. It's got to have been available, not just one that I've done on Kickstarter and like maybe I did it on Kickstarter and it's come out this year, but I haven't played it with the final thing because I only did a prototype of it. There's a load of caveats like that, but what have you enjoyed the most? What are your top 10? I imagine we're going to be, having seen the initial like the first few top 10s that get put into that meta list that someone makes that compiles them all and sees like a definitive top 10 based on everyone's opinion. The few that are on there so far, I think, I don't know if any, I don't know if my match up with any of those right now. But historically, and especially more in recent years, they haven't been lined up, but that's a good thing, isn't it? I put what I want on here. But there we go, that is it. I will see you in playthrough form, surely before the end of the year, but if I don't see you again, I think the start of next year we will be doing like our most anticipated games at some point soon. So I'll see you live for that and we'll have another big list of stuff because there's a lot to be excited about for next year. But thank you so much, anyone. Like if you've just seen me here, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching anything that I've done, not just in this year, but all of the years so far. I've done loads of videos. We must be coming up to like 1,000 playthroughs soon. I should count them so I don't miss that. Maybe I already have. But thank you so much to my patrons as well, which make all of this stuff happen. Like, it genuinely just would not exist without the support on there. It's patreon.com/slickerdrips. If you can and would like to help out, there's a link in the description. I really appreciate all of your support. And yeah, just thanks for watching more than anything. I will see you soon in playthrough form. And maybe we'll be playing through some of these that I've mentioned that haven't got playthroughs yet, although most of them have. But yeah, more great games coming in the future, I'm sure. Thank you so much, everyone. And I'll see you for one of those games. Bye.